Welcome to Navigate Now. This is a podcast where we explore all things around people and place and how we find our way around the built environment. I'm your host, Jonathan Doxey. For today's episode, we're going to look about how people with sight loss find and navigate their way around the built environment. Today we've got a special guest, Susanette, and we're going to explore this topic together. Hi Susanette.
Thanks for having me. I've listened to a few of your episodes, so looking forward to having a conversation about wayfinding. So I'm Susanette. I work at Cordon Vision, and we work to smash the taboos of sight loss and taking people on a transformative journey from dependence to independence. And I lead the organization.
Cool, brilliant. So yeah, that's the point. I want to have a conversation about how we can learn about people with sight loss. Understand a little bit more about how they navigate the world around us, that environment that we live in, we work in. I think it's important to educate and to inform about how we can create inclusive environments and the importance of that, because I think it's maybe we'll pick up on some real life scenarios, some real life examples to show those real active problems that people are having when they're facing that new journey. That journey they make consistently, maybe they've got to change a mode of transport, and how we can use design to create more responsibility for them and also for the environments that they work inside of. I think we'll highlight some of the connection between how wayfinding can make our towns, our cities, our environments a lot more accessible and a lot more inclusive, that it doesn't have to be a route for this particular user type and a route for that particular user type. We are on one journey together as a community, as a society, to make sure all of our places are more enjoyable for everybody. So I think there's three things that I want to pick up on: accessible wayfinding for indoor and outdoor environments, some real life challenges. I know we've worked together for many years now. I remember one example when I was at Croydon Vision, someone was saying on one of the workshops that I was just taking a listening, that they said that they forgot what trees looked like. And for me, that was a very powerful moment that I've not forgotten since that particular day. And I think that's really important, isn't it? To get a clear perspective of what a person with sight loss, the impacts that has on their life and how they get around.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is noted. I think a few years ago, a survey that was done, and people were asked what sense would they fear losing the most, and sight loss was over 70% that people
Wow.
noted. And I think one of the key things that people need to understand is that silos is different for different people. So just because there is a spec done for a certain group of people with sight loss does not necessarily mean it's covered the whole range of sight loss, because lighting can be very different for different people. And I remember when I came here in 2018 and I was talking to some of the members and asking them what do they do when they're not at Cardin Vision. And a lot of them were saying that they generally don't go out because they do not know how to navigate the different places around. So from a coffee shop that could put their notice board outside, which is a hindrance and a hazard for someone with sight loss because they probably don't see it and then they tumble, to going into a shop whereby someone will say, where's the place for trousers, and a staff member will just say over there, rather than actually understanding that you've got to be descriptive in the language. Over there, you're saying to your left, 4 steps forward, things like that actually can make them feel actually you're considering me as a person in a sense. So it's been a challenge, and it's also been a way of collaborating with members, because my challenge to them was, well, if you stay this way, nothing's going to change. So let's do something together. Let's go into shops. You go into shops, tell me whether they did well or not, and then we'll contact those shops and have real conversations with them as how to create and scale up the awareness of sight loss. And that's something we've been doing. with them being part of it, which has been quite collaborative. I mean, recently we did one with UCL to do a training and a workplace assessment at their place. And it's amazing how people might think they have things already placed
Yeah.
accessibly, and then when you go there, you realize. But we also try to be understanding that cost can be a factor. So we
Mm.
always recommend things which are like quick wins, and then there's medium to long term plans that you can put in place, with all the aim of making sure that places are accessible for people with sight loss.
So that's interesting. So I wanted to pick up on that point you made about people not going out. So I want to
Mm.
get a bit more of an understanding of what that environment looks like from navigating places that are indoors. And then maybe we might come and talk about kind of navigating more of the outdoor environment, so the streetscape that we find ourselves in. So, what specific challenges are faced by people with visual impairment when they're specifically indoors? I'm thinking maybe like a shopping mall, a supermarket, those types of environments that are public, but they're indoors.
Yeah. I mean, it starts from someone having a guide dog and a security guy not knowing that that is a guide dog, and being able
Yeah,
to distinguish that that is a guide dog from not from a regular dog, which would not be permissible to a restaurant, for example. Yeah.
yeah,
It starts from a taxi, a cab who doesn't pick up people with a dog because they're not conversant enough to know, educative, being more aware to know that actually that is a guide dog, which means that that is an aid to the person with sight loss, or even being able to support them in and out of a cab. And then you go into a restaurant, for example, or shopping mall with signs that are not very visible or accessible for people with sight loss, because it's pretty much, you can see like a white in silver frame,
there's
and
no contrast, there's no
there's no
color.
contrast to it for them. You walk into a restaurant, and what one of the things we're trying to work with restaurants is, can we have accessible menus? Because you might put a menu in front of someone and they don't know what on, you don't even know that it's there. And most people want to be independent of their own, so an audio menu would help, or even just the staff being more aware and saying, would you like some support with that, rather than just putting it in there on top of on the table, or having a braille menu, which it's not that many people. It's only about 2% of people who actually do read braille, but there are
Yeah,
people
yeah,
who
support,
have
isn't
the
it?
knowledge. Yeah.
Mm.
So just even in a restaurant, putting food on the table and not letting them know exactly where the food is, so they don't know that the food is there or the drinks is there. So it's people becoming very much more aware that whatever you see, describe to someone with sight loss, because they need that so that they then can have the same experience as you're having, in a sense. So that's just an example of an indoor. I mean, it goes into a shopping mall, navigating the different places that are in there, or even someone wanting to take the bus, but then for some reason there's roadworks and something's happened and they can't get off from where was their stop, which they knew how to navigate, but now that's not the case. What sort of support mechanism is in there? Gym is another one. So we get the examples from different angles, indoors and outdoors. And what we are trying to do together as a community is, let's make the experience inclusive for everyone.
Yeah, I want
Because
to pick up there on the kind of the guide dogs. What percentage of people with visual impairment will have, or sight loss, will have a guide dog?
it's not that many, because the waiting for a guide dog is a very long time.
Sure,
It rallies between 18 months to maybe, yeah, longer than that.
sure.
Um, but people who do have it, it makes a huge difference. We had a member who her sight loss was degenerating quite speedily and getting more anxious and anxious. And when she had a guide dog, it just literally built her up, and she's now doing her third year at university,
Oh, wow.
changing career and everything, and just so optimistic now in terms of life. We have also heard experiences of places where she would go and she has to be the one to say, no, actually, this dog needs to be with me. This dog is a part of me, rather
Mm.
than people knowing it because they've been given some level of awareness training to
So
understand
it's,
that
yeah,
that is made.
I think there's two things there. There's awareness, and
Mm.
also I think the anxiety. We talked at the beginning of our conversation around people not going out, and I guess that's around anxiety. It's about not having a comfortable space or feeling safe where they're then wanting to make that particular journey that they're focusing on. And I guess that dog, that guide dog, gives that carer, that guide, if it's a dog or a human in that sense, just allows them to open up journeys that just would never be possible before.
Yeah, and for the general public, it is really important that when you see someone with a guide dog, please don't stroke the dog. They're not a pet.
Okay. Yeah.
They're not a pet. They are there working for that individual. And we get that sometimes, and it can derail the dog in terms of, because they are leading the person. They've been
Yeah.
trained to be the lead, to be the eyes of that individual. And there are times where you do get people go like, oh, and start to talk to the dog and start to stroke the dog, and then it totally derails the dog, the guide dog, in terms of what their duty is actually for. So you could ask the owner, so a lot of time people dismiss the owner and goes to the dog, when
Yeah.
actually talk to the owner and let the owner say to you, yeah, sure, or actually, no, currently this is what's going on. Yeah.
I think it's really important to have these conversations, isn't it? To raise the profile and to make people more aware of what that guide dog is there for and how that is working. And you mentioned kind of color contrast in signage. So thinking about they say a shopping centre's got maybe a silver a background with a white text on it or something like that that's low color contrast. Um, are there any particular colours or any particular best practices that you see working with in the sight loss sector that we can all learn from when we're even just putting information together in our organisations, in our shops, in our businesses, etc., etc.
Yeah, and I think there is something called Purple Pound, which is the power of purchase by people with disability. And a lot of businesses are losing on the Purple Pound because of the lack of accessibility of their shops, of the town centers, of the places that people with sight loss or other disabilities could go to. And that's not only the physical shops, we're also talking virtual shops as well,
Definitely.
whereby, if your website is not accessible, people will not come to it. And we support, in terms of looking and assessing a website and saying, okay, how can that website become more accessible? Same with your shops. Generally the rule is black and white, or a black in yellow is a good contrast in terms of colors. A lot of time people want to put these very fancy things on in their shops and things like that, and it looks nice. I mean, one place that we went to do a workplace assessment, they had this very fancy equipment. The thing about it is it's all flat, so
Yeah.
someone with sight loss doesn't know where the start button is, or where the close and open button is for anything.
Yeah.
And so what would happen? They could just be pressing buttons and it affected, and costing them more. And it just takes little shift of using low vision aids, like something called a bump on, which you put on the equipment, and that person with sight loss, instead of a flat screen, they will feel the bump on and know, okay, that's the number of what I need to press for a start or finish. And so it's things like that which are very quick wins that people can do. Color contrasting, quick low vision aids that you can use in your facilities. I mean, the other thing is like carpet, the carpet and the chairs in a reception room or in a waiting room are the same. It's very hard for someone with sight loss to understand, okay, have I left the carpet or am I at the chair? So contrasting those things is also very important. Contrasting to make sure that if the desk is far away, that from wherever they are, they can see some colors, a yellow or something that starts to make them conscious to know that, okay, that's the way, because they want their independence. It's not just you doing it for them. Our role, what we're about, is empowering people with sight loss so they can do for themselves. And we love that where we see people come in and we take them on a rebuilding journey of their lives until they get to from survival to thriving. Some of them get into employment, they get their own, make their own business, and they start to become ambassadors and voice for sight loss to say, look, I can do this. And so we don't want to be them to be cushioned and just saying, how can I help you? Let me help you. But more of, sometimes they do need the help, and let them be the one to say, can you help me, please? But generally, if you make your place accessible enough, people will be independently able to use that space, and they will feel more inclusive.
Yeah, definitely. I think where you mentioned there about the carpets in the reception area, I sometimes use an example of haptic feedback when we're navigating in the outdoor environment. Say you're in like a park and you've got a gravel footpath, and you've got grass next to it. Often, we like those with visual impairment, I guess, or sight loss, can very quickly understand when they're on the gravel path through audible and tactile, and when on the grass. So understanding the use of surfaces can be really important when we're navigating around the built environment. So I wanted to come on to, obviously, talked a little bit about the indoor environment. When we're outside in the public space, on a footpath, by a busy road, in a train station, those kind of environments, and what kind of challenges do people with sight loss come against in that might not be, they might be similar as indoor, but might be slightly different, that we need to have a clear understanding of?
Yeah, I think there is a misconception people have that someone with sight loss should have these thick glasses on with a big cane,
Yeah.
and that demonstrate they have sight loss.
Mm.
Well, that is not the case, because a lot of people with sight loss have different forms of sight loss, and a lot of times they might not even wear glasses. You and I are wearing glasses, so someone could potentially think that, oh, maybe they do have vision impairment.
Yeah.
Um, so it's varies very much so. So a quick story is one of our members who, very empowered young lady who goes out and travels around. So she generally doesn't need her cane for certain things. And then for other things, she needs to navigate, especially a space that she's never been to, a place that she's never been to. So she came out of a train station and went to one of the workers and said, "Can you please? This is my name. Can you please help me to get to the platform that I need to get to?" And this individual looked at them and said, "Didn't I just see you swirl down the train? Why would you need my help?" So that's the misconception. So yes, she was very much confident to get out of the train, but not as much not so confident in navigating her way to the next platform to then go and get the next train. And she needed that support. But the misconception of, she wasn't wearing a glasses, she didn't have a cane on her, you just walked out from a train, so why should I be the one to help you? Those are the kind of the things that society needs to just think about and go like, oh, hang on a minute, I need to learn more about what it entails in terms of supporting someone with sight loss, or being there for someone with sight loss in a sense. So um, within outdoors, I mentioned earlier, there's a real concern where people leave signages in the wrong place. I understand people do want to advertise what they're doing.
A business,
It's
yeah.
just, what people need to understand is someone with sight loss, when you and I walk a street, we walk in the middle of a street because we don't need the left or the right to navigate whether it's safe or not. We can see that it's
Yeah.
safe or it's not safe. Someone with sight loss will always, if there's a wall to their left, they will lean more to walk to the left of that wall or the right of that wall and feel the wall as they go along. It becomes this a safe space for them to use to navigate their way. So we were at this workplace doing an assessment, and they have beautiful plants. Yeah, but most of the plants are in the
Oh,
walkway
yeah, yeah,
on the edge of the left or the right. So
yeah, yeah,
someone with sight loss is pretty much bumping into these plants, and they're huge plants. So it
yeah, yeah.
becomes a hazard
And they
for
might protrude
someone.
over the top. They might not just be straight and linear like a wall
Exactly.
typically would expect
So
it to be.
exactly. So it's things about what would be helpful is when you are constructing a place or you're looking to put a signage in a place, think from the angle, close your eyes and think, if I was to navigate this space, what's the best way I would do it? And this is where empathy comes in. A lot of time people try and portray sympathy to someone with sight loss, and it becomes very condescending.
Yeah,
What people with sight loss want is your empathy. And empathy is about, I know what I no, I don't know, but I'm going to try my best to understand what you're going through and how I can be more inclusive and supportive to you. So my suggestion to the people that day was to say, close your eyes and try and walk down this corridor. And
yeah.
if you can navigate it with no bumping on anything, then you're on the right track and you're doing well. If you can't, then something needs to be changed.
I know one of the days you put on maybe a year or so ago now, you had like a night gadget that you
Yeah.
could wear that you could dial in different conditions. Like you said at the beginning of our conversation, sight loss is not a one fits all scope in that sense. Everyone, like you said, like with anyone wearing glasses, you could argue has an element, an entry level element of sight loss. And I guess none of us know when that might come to us either, in that sense, through the course of life. And that was a really good experience to get a clear understanding of how different conditions affect spatial awareness,
Mhm.
cognitive ability, which have an impact on how we navigate around the built environment. But you mentioned kind of tactile surfaces and paving and that kind of thing. Audible information. We were on a project. And it wasn't someone with sight loss, but someone mentioned that if you have screens, that's great, but having audible announcements for transport hubs, do you see that common, or is it something that would be beneficial?
It is becoming common in buses, a lot more than what it used to be, which is quite helpful. I think what hasn't what needs to progress from that is if there was a diversion, what happens?
Okay, yeah, so
Uh,
you can have the standard recorded audible
yeah,
announcement, but
exactly.
the driver effectively, I guess, or
Yeah,
some control center needs to say we're on something different's happening now. This is what the impact it's going to have.
exactly. And that's what that would be helpful in that sense. Tactile is very much helpful. I mean, I remember years ago, a few years back, we used to have members who are beneficiaries who you would have to go from the outside to pick them up to come in here. And so
Yeah,
I was like, why? You know, because I'm
yeah,
all for empowerment. So I'm like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
what can we do differently? And by having tactile walking tiles from the front of the building all the way to the hall, coming up down to get to the entrance, has made a difference. Now people don't need that support, they just literally follow the tactile through to the building, and that's what makes someone feel, hang on a minute, I can do this,
yeah,
I'm okay, I'm safe. And that's the thing. Because if you shut your eyes, I've done a visual awareness training where I shut my eyes and I was guided to the main road. And I thought cars were coming at me because there's something about your senses of hearing becomes more enhanced when sight is gone.
Mm.
Other senses are more enhanced. And so when I took out the mask, I realized that I was so far from the road.
Yeah.
Somehow I just thought that the road was eating me up, like it was coming at me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and so imagine someone with sight loss, that's what they have to face day to day. So hearing so many voices around them can be quite something. They're trying to navigate all of that. And you rightly mentioned about the sight, the people who have peripherals, the those who don't have peripherals, the people who have tunnel vision and that's all they have. So the different dynamics, and also weather can change people's sight loss. In a day,
Okay.
someone yesterday could see perfectly well about 60%. Today it might be only 20% that they can see, depending on the dynamics of the weather. So one of the things that I've learned to always ask someone and to manage expectation is always ask the person, as we are where we are, what can you see?
Yeah.
And that changes the expectation gap. It bridges away the gap of whatever you knew yesterday might not necessarily be the same today.
I guess
And
your condition might change, get better,
exactly.
get worse as
And
as as you
and you
as
know
you.
what? They actually appreciate those questions.
Yeah.
It's not offensive. They actually appreciate it because for them, you want to try and know and understand where they're at.
So we'll talk about tactile. One thing, and we've kind of half mentioned, I wanted to pick up just briefly, is Braille. Where do you obviously we get Braille? It's important to make information accessible as possible in that sense. Where do you see Braille as benefiting or maybe fitting within the process of enabling someone with sight loss to get that information? Is it really popular? Is it quite used, or is it on the contrary?
There are many people who are very keen still to learn Braille, and we use it. We have a Braille machine here, and we use it to create intergenerational activities, actually, in that sense, to try and create intergenerational activities to
Mm.
see how we can get younger people to get involved in Braille. I think it is still a really good skill to have if one wants to learn it and understand it. It's very important in places like, a lift, for example. It makes it, it's very easy for you to be able to navigate. Okay, I know where I am. I mean, when we were installing a lift, it was one of the key things that our members said, can we please ensure the lift, the numbers are also in braille, so
Yeah.
we made sure that we had that. Even our doors, because people with sight loss, they feel a lot. So
Yeah.
even our doors, each of the numbering in the doors also comes with braille, and people can feel that. So I think braille is still very much important. I just also would encourage people not to think that braille then just answers all the questions.
Yeah.
um and that means you've ticked your box of, accessibility, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's it, because that's not the case. I mean, technology is playing a game changing role with people, for people with sight loss and other disabilities. It's playing a game changing role for sure. The issue with technology is it's still very expensive, and it's
Yeah.
not as accessible for most people with sight loss. The gadgets are quite expensive, and so that's something that we can, go through it, explore a bit more, and elaborate a bit more
Yeah,
on.
and I know a big thing for you is not just the stereotypes of people with visual impairment. A big thing for you is all about everyone, every generation, every
Yeah,
age type. So whether that's children, young people, working age, or older people, it's in making sure that everyone's included and bringing together that community to support each other, but also those resources for each of those different people. You mentioned people starting businesses that have sight loss. That's awesome. It's about that empowerment, isn't it? Someone
yeah,
be able to get to a new destination for the first time. So, kind of thinking about, we've touched on their technology. What kind of technology is out there at the moment that can help people navigate the environments that maybe they've not been to before?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the things that we talk about a lot, and we really would like to work with more people, more businesses, and town centers. I mean, we're currently here in Croydon. There's a town regeneration that's taking place or
Yeah,
proposing to be taking place, and we're talking to them in relation of accessibility. And in terms of technology, it's where investments can be made in terms of audio descriptions on things, rather than, again, what we talked about, just making sure that there's braille, and thinking, like
ticking the
here in
box and
Britain, it's
moving
like
on.
12,000 people with some form of sight loss. Not
Yeah,
12,000 people know braille. It's probably less. I mean, it's in UK, it's about 2% of people.
okay.
That was
So
the
a
statistic.
very, very small
It's
proportion.
a very, very small statistics of people with sight loss who knows how to read braille. So that's a
Yeah,
misconception that people have, that, someone with a thick, so there's got the thick glasses, the big cane, and you can read braille, and that's
yeah,
it.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
not the case. In terms of navigating ways around, I mean, most smartphones these days have really good accessibility features. And the thing about it is, someone with sight loss knowing, having the training for it. And
Yeah,
so you mentioned about, I love the fact that we have this intergenerational community. The other part of that community is the family and friends as well,
mm,
because then they, by empowering them, they get to understand more about how to support this individual now whose life has just changed, in a sense. And so we encourage that, to say, come in with your family or friends, in the sense of knowing how to navigate your phone, because, again, most smartphones are very slim and very
yeah, yeah, yeah.
touch screen and all of that. So it takes you understanding how to navigate a phone, how
And
to
physical
work
buttons
out.
have been removed, haven't they? So kind of you don't get that tactile understanding like
Exactly.
the bumpers that you
Exactly.
mentioned.
Yes, then, with, but not having that is can be a challenge. There's also some pros in terms of the smartphone now, because it has features that you would not even imagine possible before. Having a talk over, smart talk over, whereby their voice can be recognized. When you want to go to places, getting someone that can navigate that, the mapping of that route for that individual. There's many places now whereby, if you talk to them in advance and explain to them what the circumstances is. So I hope that the businesses who are watching this are thinking, okay, do we have that or do we not have
Yeah,
that? If someone is coming into your shop, do you have someone who can support them to, because they might be independent to come into, let's say, you go into a supermarket store. They might be fine to want to go and do the shopping themselves. The thing is, there might be teens that are on higher shelves,
yeah.
um, and they can't really see the writing of the best before date.
They're
So,
very practical
and they're
things.
like personal shoppers who can support them with those things. And that, imagine, I mean, we have over 1,000 members that we
Wow.
support, right? Of those over 5,000 members, they've got family and friends. So in total, we have over 5,000 people that we work with, in
Yeah.
that sense. If one member, two, three member goes into a store and that store gave them a fantastic service, guess what? Your
More are coming.
store is going to be talked about, and the ripple effect will be enormous.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's brilliant.
when we talk to businesses and towns, it's kind of saying to them, this is a win all for everyone. Make
Yeah.
your place accessible, learn the process, learn to understand and be more aware about what it entails, and not just tick a box, but actually,
Don't just tick the boxes of those standard things. And that's what's been really
yes,
beneficial, I think, about this conversation is there's lots of small things that we can all do in the places that we manage and that we're custodians of to make that place more accessible. So maybe just to wrap up then, because I think it's been a work we could talk about this for a long time more in that sense, and feel free to reach out to Susanette and the team at Croydon Vision to understand more of the work that they're involved with. But if there would be like one thing that you could change, what would it be? And maybe more importantly, what impact would that have on a person with sight loss?
Yeah, I mean, I could have a basket here, isn't it?
Of course.
Um, I'll take it one from an individual, one from someone with sight loss, right?
Okay.
Okay, so from an individual, a lot of people have the heart of wanting to help.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. You do have occasionally the horror stories.
Yeah.
Generally, most people want to help. The thing about it is, ask yourself: Am I doing more good? Am I doing good, or am I actually doing a detriment to this individual? So, for example, you'll be at a bus stop. Someone is at a crossing, and generally, there's a aid at the bottom of that crossing that
Yes.
someone with sight loss can feel and press.
Yeah.
Someone might be on the other side of the road, not knowing what that person is doing. They run off and go to this person and grab them by the hand to take them to the next part of the road because they
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
doing good.
Yeah. Yeah.
About that is A, you haven't actually asked that person whether they need help. You haven't introduced yourself to them. They don't know who just grabbed them. They don't know where they're going because you haven't communicated anything to them.
Mm,
You've left them more disoriented than where
very
they
true.
were in their journey. So awareness and education is really important. Get in touch and let's learn together so people understand more about sight, about what sight impairment is about. And that will help society. We see young people who are learning these things and they then go and adopt them in their homes, with their
Brilliant.
grandparents or their communities or even at school, and understanding more how to empathize than
Yeah.
just sympathy in a sense.
Mm,
In terms of what would be a game changer for people with sight loss is making technology more accessible for them in terms of the cost.
okay.
Currently, a general microwave would be what, maybe 50, 75 pound. A
Yeah. Yeah.
microwave for someone with sight loss could lead to 250, 300 because it's got the
Oh wow.
talking features and the audio features. That's just an example.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
Yeah. There's a
scale
contrast
could
there.
be one cost, but an accessible scale can be, hundreds of pounds in a sense. So there's barriers still that
Yeah.
the equipment are there, but there's barriers in terms of cost because most people who we're talking about are coming from very high deprivation areas, and so
Sure.
technology making it more accessible cost wise will be a game changer.
Cool, brilliant. I think this conversation has been really insightful for me. I've learnt loads from the conversation. I hope everyone that's able to listen to this conversation will likewise find lots of different benefits and those little quick wins that we can do and those bigger conversations we can collaborate with, like you were saying with the town that you're working with, is about being part of that project group to make sure that everyone could benefit from it at the end of the road.
Yeah, and I think we all learn. I mean, you and I, Jonathan, we've worked together for like you said, a number of years, and
Yeah.
I learned from you in terms of websites, what can contrast and all of those things, and vice versa. We go like,
Mm,
oh, that picture will not work, and things like that. And
definitely.
I think what you're doing in terms of making places more accessible is really great. And so I hope that people who are listening to this will think to themselves and saying, how accessible am I in what I'm a custodian of, and how can people like Jonathan Wayfinding support that project, or reevaluate what they're doing so that and like we said, it doesn't all have to be so costly. It can be just shifts of a quick wins that can make things more accessible for people.
Brilliant. No, so thanks so much for your time and look forward to our further work together.
Thank you.
So thanks for joining us on this episode of Navigate Now. I've been your host, Jonathan Doxey. It's great to explore these topics together and further understand how we can make the places and the spaces that we manage accessible for everybody. So feel free to like and subscribe to this content so you can join that growing community of listeners as we embark on this learning process together. We've got loads of episodes coming up with guests and with ourselves as well as we learn together of how we can improve the spaces that are around us.